Hey, this is going to be a very exciting teaching, and I want you to listen to this because this is a true story that happened years ago, and it's one of the most amazing stories I have ever heard about God's supernatural protection during a disaster. And you know, with earthquakes and with tsunamis and with the possibility of hurricanes and tornadoes, this is something that you need to watch and you need to be aware of. And I'll give you an interesting key that the man that saw this miracle believed was a part of his protection. And again, this is not my opinion. This comes from this man's historical record itself. The man I'm talking about was a man by the name of Alexander Kerr, and you will see on the screen a Kerr jar. He started the Kerr jar factory. But let me give you a little history about his background to help you understand the level of faith that he had and why his faith was released during a major devastating earthquake, one of the worst in America's history. Kerr was converted to Christ at age 14. His name was Alexander Kerr, under the preaching of D.L. Moody, and later joined the Presbyterian Church in Philadelphia. In 1902, he came across a special tract, and the tract was just a little booklet that was printed up, titled Judah's Scepter and Joseph's Birthright. And in it, the writer talked about how that Jacob in the Old Testament had made a vow to God to be a giver if God would bless him, and how God blessed him so he went in with nothing into Syria, and 20 years later came back with so much stuff he couldn't even give it away hardly to his brother Esau. In June 1st of 1902, he made a vow to God that whatever he would do, he would set a percentage of his income for God's work, and he immediately began giving. Now, the important part is, he didn't just read something to try it. When he read it, it quickened his heart, it got down in his spirit. And you'll find that your greatest results in life, especially from a spiritual perspective, is when what you hear and learn gets from here down into your spirit. That's how faith is generated once the revelation hits your spirit. And this is what happened to this man. At the time of 1902, June the 1st, he had a mortgage on a home, he owed many bills, and he was actually burdened down with many cares, but he began to believe. Now, 3 months after he began to set aside income for the work of God, and we're not sure, I don't have the record of who he gave it to. I'm sure it was tithed to his church and helping the poor and so on, according to what you can find. But after 3 months, unexpected blessings began to occur. Now, that same year, he started what was called the Kerr Jar Factory. The jars were being made and manufactured in a factory in San Francisco, California. And God began to bless him tremendously. But something happened in 1906, several years later. Now remember, the jars have been going out. God is prospering him. He's blessing him. And suddenly, the famous San Francisco earthquake, recorded as one of the worst disasters of an earthquake in American history, costing 3,000 lives or so, if my memory serves me correct. It hit the city, gas pipes are bursting, fires are breaking out, a lot of brick buildings are in complete shambles, the city is devastated, and he was out of state at the time the earthquake happened, but he received what was then called a wire, and they did that through a machine, and it said, "Kerr, you are a ruined man. The city of San Francisco is in complete ruins from an earthquake." And he was with a group of men that heard him say this, "I don't believe it. And if I am, the Bible's not true. God cannot go back on his promises." Now, he wasn't threatening God or holding God hostage with that statement. He was simply sharing that he had faith to believe that because of his obedience, God was going to bless him and honor him. He would never be ruined, even if there was a disaster. But here's the amazing thing. According to another wire that came, quote, "Your factory is in the heart of a fire. No doubt all is lost." Then it took several days for people to get to the site and to examine things and examine what has taken place. It was a lot of rubble, a lot of fires, a lot of bodies at that time as well. And here's what the next wire said, quote, "Everything for a mile and a half on all sides of the factory burned, but your factory was miraculously saved." And here's a quote. "The factory was a 2-story wooden building with huge tanks where glass was melted. The temperatures when the melting process occurred were 2,500 degrees. Oil was used for fuel, so this should have been most flammable. In other words, that building should have been the most flammable in the area. The fire had raged on all sides, creeping up the wooden fence surrounding the building, even scorching it. Flames would leap around in all directions, but here's the amazing part, quote, "Not a single jar was broke or even cracked." How do you go through an earthquake where 3,000 people have died, a city's devastated, and there's fires everywhere, and you have a jar factory, not a plastic factory, not a steel plant, jars that break very easy, and yet every jar was intact? He accredited to his obedience to God, his covenant with God, and that God promised he would bless those who would put his kingdom first. And that's really what the New Testament teaches as well. So by 1912, he was so impressed with what God did to protect his jar factory that he began to place leaflets in the boxes of his Kerr jars called God's Cure for Poverty, in which he taught the principles of the Bible on tithing to God and putting him first, and how God would bless him. And that's where someone said, that's where, I don't have the track, but they said that's where he also shared the amazing story. I did a little bit of research some time back, and the last research I got, which could be old basically by the time that people see this, Ruth Kerr is a descendant of Alexander Kerr, and her background is Baptist. She attends the Baptist church, and she runs the company out of Los Angeles, and they still tithe. And again, this is older information, so we're assuming that it's true to this day. And I'm sure she was, and if she's still living, is still a giver to God's work based on the patterns of her, of those that started the factory many years ago. Just as a note that you might find interesting, I want you to listen to this, because when you talk about giving to the work of God, people today do not know the Bible. People don't understand the Bible. They see giving as some trick of taking people's money. They don't understand the concept, given it'll be given unto you. They don't understand the concept of Malachi 3, bring the tithe and I'll open up the windows of heaven. They don't know any of those verses. I do. My wife, I have been giving since I was 11, charity to the poor and tithe. My wife gives a check every time we go to church to the work of God. And so we've been doing this, and we are very highly favored and highly blessed of the Lord. And we know that's not all the reason why, that's a part of the reason why. But listen to this. These following men who were founders of companies in America were tithers and givers to their local congregation and to charities. John D. Rockefeller began tithing $3.50 a week when he first started working. H.P. Crowell, which was the head of the Quaker Oats Company, was a tither. H.J. Heinz of the Heinz 57, you see the Heinz 57, which is used on steaks and things. This particular man who founded the company was a tither. J.L. Kraft of Kraft Cheese was a tither. M.N. Baldwin of Baldwin Locomotive was a tither. William Wrigley of Wrigley's Gum was a tither. M.S. Hershey of the Hershey chocolate fame was a tither. William Colgate of the Colgate Palmolive Company, actually it was the Colgate Company originally, who founded that company, was a tither. So about 5 of these companies, sometimes they have merged, but they have the same name, the same basic products, although they have developed over the years, still exist. And some of these companies and some of the, for example, Baldwin Locomotive, I mean, you know, I don't know anything about engines, train engines. And so anyway, you look at this list, and most of these companies either became $100 million, hundreds of millions of dollars in business, or even into the billions of dollars, and their founders sowed to the work of God. So let me just say something to you, that never be afraid to help people, never be afraid to assist someone. Your reward is not always down here. Jesus taught that your reward would be great in heaven as well. And probably that's where you want it anyway, because that reward is eternal. So listen, if you ever in a situation where you are in need, and we've had this happen to us where storms would blow through or things would happen. And I remember one time in a very serious crisis situation, I looked up to the Lord in prayer early in the morning. And I said, remember me, I've given prisoners material free. I have fed the widow and the orphan. I have fed your people overseas. And I started listing these things to God that I have been obedient to Him. And I said, now, Lord, fight my battle. And I'm telling you, there's a confidence that comes when you know you've done everything you can to do the right thing, and God sees it. and you can have confidence and trust in Him. Isn't that a great story? If you've enjoyed the story, just give it a thumbs up, and just always remember it if you ever have a need for God's protection in any way, and trust Him for that. And two things very quickly that I'll need to tell you, and that is we're getting our subscriptions up. The YouTube channel is growing very much. We need you guys that watch us overseas and in Canada and some parts of outside the United States to try to subscribe to our channel so that we can get our numbers up. And there's a reason for that we won't go into detail with. But we want you to subscribe, hit the bell so you'll have the notification. But also remember that if you have a phone or a computer of any type, you can go to perrystone.org, which is our ministry webpage. And I'm telling you, we have a ton of resources. I've written over 100 books. Most of you have never seen 90 of them. And DVDs and CDs that have deep material. And the reason that we offer them and let you obtain that resource is because this is how we keep our Manifest program on the air, and we take care of all the expenses, literally incredible expenses that it costs us to keep a global ministry running. Thank you for your prayers. Watch this as we always make a special offer to you.
Now available, Perry Stone's latest prophetic package. Discover America's future concealed in historical and biblical patterns in Perry's landmark book, The Final Ciphers and the Return of Christ. Perry has explored and tapped into important revelation and understanding, detailing 20 ciphers, including stunning prophetic cycles and patterns based on ancient and end-time prophecies in Scripture. Some of the chapters include Unlocking and Understanding God's Cipher System, the prophetic ciphers of 2 cities, the China Link, the virus cycles echoing ancient ciphers of the Roman Empire, the cipher of the 3rd trimester, birth pains, America's ciphers parallel with ancient history, ciphers from the Roman Empire, America's death of conscience and conviction, the Pompeii cipher and the forbidden J word, the cipher of the breach when America's hedge was cracked, the future cipher of the image of the beast, Revelation 13, unlocking the cipher of the mark of the beast, Revelation 13, interpreting the cipher of strange cosmic signs, the money cipher, the clue before empire's decline. Perry also answers the question, who can escape what is coming on the earth? And he will give a warning cipher from the Holy Spirit for the church. Included with the book is the 2 audio CD teaching, Preparing and Surviving During Hard Times. Is it time to leave big cities? And what are the steps to prepare for coming disasters and future trouble? Perry's latest prophetic package, which includes the book The Final Ciphers and the Return of Christ, along with the 2 audio CD teaching series, Preparing and Surviving During Hard Times, are now available for a donation of just $35 or more. Visit perrystone.org or call toll-free 1-888-21-BREAD. That's 1-888-212-7323. You may also write us at Perry Stone, P.O. Box 3595, Cleveland, Tennessee 37320, and request offer number FC138. We look forward to hearing from you soon.
If you enjoyed this YouTube content, there's an important website you should know about: perrystone.org. Perrystone.org is an essential resource for the latest books, audiovisual presentations, and digital products from Perry Stone Ministries. Resources that cover the same kinds of topics discussed in the program you just watched. Stop in and see all that's available at perrystone.org.